I'm just going to do a very brief update on one of our own strategic themes, and in particular just highlight some of the themes that have emerged from 3 recent reports, and to suggest some ideas for possible next step, which we can discuss at the roundtable that we're going to have after the 3 presentations this afternoon. Strategic aim 4, sorry to do this to you just after lunch in the graveyard hour, seeks to develop opportunities for maximising the potential of our special or of our unique and distinctive collections. And we've used unique and distinctive rather than just simply special collections, because what we're referring to are the things either in physical format or held digitally that are uniquely held by our institution and often produced by our institution. So ultimately we want this work to include things like research data and research outputs that are held in our institutional repository, as much as we do things relating to our medieval manuscripts and our uniquely held archives. So we tried to scope it very broadly. And this strand of work has been beautifully led, if I may say, by Andrew, who is indeed, I believe this is your very last day as National Librarian of Wales. But Andrew has steered us through this absolutely wonderfully, and it's been a real pleasure working with him. And the sorts of things we've been looking at are developing opportunities for maximising the potential of the collections in all formats, including looking at public engagement, fundraising, promotion, resource discovery and delivery, digitisation, value, in other words, how they add value to our institution and what impact they have on our institution, the staff skills required to manage them, the space, be it physical or virtual, required to store them. And also we hope to have a little bit of an exploration into digital humanities, including exploring some innovative research methods, issues of access, search and reuse. And in fact, what Emma's just shown us is a real hard example of all of that, a real concrete example of all of that. One of the things that we did was commission a new, oops, that was interesting. One of the things that we did was commission a new report, and in order to take some of the work of that forward, we appointed Alison Cullingford as a part-time Unique and Distinctive Collections Project Director. And Alison's done a huge amount of desk research. She's gathered a lot of information and ideas from a wide range of curators and partner organisations. So it's not just been within RLUK. She's looked at some outside bodies as well. And also begun to look at identifying and developing case studies and identifying best and innovative practice. Because I think it's fair to say that one of the things that she's encountered is that in a lot of areas where some of us have issues, there's probably somebody else out there who is actually making a success of something that we may be struggling with. The final report will be published in probably spring, summer 2013. And if anybody can tell me when spring, summer's going to happen, then we'll tell you when the report's going to come out. Now, in fact, the RLUK report is one of 3 reports. And I'll just note them briefly here. So one of them, the first one is the Hidden Collections report, of the findings of RLUK retrospective cataloguing survey, and that one was conducted with the London Library and was published in 2012, and that's available on the RLUK website. Then there was the OCLC survey of special collections and archives in the United Kingdom and Ireland, and Tizia is going to talk to us a bit about that later on. I will mention it briefly here. And then finally, and we haven't yet decided on the title, but this is its working title, Unique and Distinctive Collections in the UK and Ireland. Hidden Collections was looking at gathering evidence about the ongoing need for retrospective cataloguing of UK collections. And it followed on from a 2007 RIN survey, which was published under the title Uncovering Hidden Resources. And it surveyed 75 institutions, so again, well beyond RLUK. 38 of these were HE, 7 public, and 32 specialist organisations. And the sort of emerging themes that came up there were that there remain still some significant backlogs, approaching 20% of the total of the collections. And typically, a lot of the perceived difficult stuff is included in those backlogs. So it's funny format stuff like music, it's stuff in languages that we may not have expertise on within our staff. What it doesn't do is help us to understand whether that 20% is actually material that is duplicated either amongst itself or across existing catalogue libraries. It doesn't begin to do that. It highlighted a concern that I have to say shocked me a little bit, that some institutions are actually adding to these backlogs with real new modern stuff, which in a day when usually you can get the catalogue with the item, I have to say shocked me slightly. And it's highlighted the absence of some reliable metrics. The OCLC survey, this was a sister survey to the 2012 Taking Our Pulse survey, which looked at collections in the USA and Canada. And what we did was used, and again this was done very, very closely with RLUK, it used a version of that 2012 survey to enable comparison with the US and Canada results. And it really sought to develop a profile of the special collections practices within RLUK and other libraries across the UK and Ireland. And of the 120 odd institutions contacted, they had 82 responses. So again, you can see that's well beyond the RLUK membership. And the themes that emerged from that were a lot around outreach and services, some stuff around staff, space, born digital, and particularly the challenges of collecting born digital collections, digitization and the absence overall of a big strategy and the patchy nature of digitization, and also the discoverability of some of the materials that have been digitized. Archival documentation, and again there are some backlogs there, so there's some unique stuff that is not being surfaced, and particularly not being surfaced in electronic form. Print cataloguing, preservation, and again the absence of some reliable metrics. Our own report, the one that Alison has been leading, working on with the UDC group, that was looking at the connection of our unique and distinctive collections to our own institutional missions. It's looking at how they support research, student learning, public engagement, fundraising and marketing of the institution, not just of the library or the special collections areas. It looked at exploring some of the challenges, highlighting good and best practice, and really trying to tease out areas for collaborative action by RLUK. What can we do next? What can we do together to overcome some of these challenges? And some of the early findings include, the first one here, opportunities for developing the COPAC collection management tool. This is about really looking at our collections and partly understanding within our collections that are not currently defined as unique or distinctive, but mainly our modern collections, whether they, because of the nature of the materials, whether they themselves might be classed as special. So in other words, we might have a particular strength in our libraries in a particular field, which across a broad range of printed materials, which may not be replicated anywhere else in the country. So it might be, for instance, that one of your collections has got a very, very strong strength in Russian materials, which is not necessarily mirrored across the country. A lot of chat, a lot of discussion at the moment about exploring effective de-accessioning programs, and that might seem pretty horrific if what we're talking here about is about special collections, then why are we talking about throwing stuff out? But really what a lot of what this is about is also some of the maybe addressing some of the less than policy-driven collecting that has gone on in the past in some of our institutions. Some signs of recognition going on out there. Looking at developing toolkits for costing digitisation programmes, we're probably all aware that it can often be really, really difficult to cost a digitisation project, and it will partly depend on whether what you're doing is dealing with are multiple single image items, or whether you're dealing with much more complex objects, such as a whole manuscript, which needs to be presented as a whole manuscript, because the number of images you take certainly does not necessarily relate one-on-one with the effort needed for metadata creation, just for one example. Looking to develop guidelines for the acquisition of born digital archives, developing a toolkit to support student engagement, and again, what Emma's shown us this morning, or sorry, just earlier on, is one example of how to engage with either the teenagers or moving on into student engagement. And similarly, developing an outreach toolkit. Some of our institutions have very well developed outreach programs, others don't. Some have institutional missions that support and actively encourage outreach. Others don't yet, or others may have institutional missions but don't themselves actively engage in that kind of work. Again, metrics has popped up. So means of something that can be used to help understand and demonstrate the impact of these collections. And one of the other things that's emerging is the possibility of establishing a group of RLUK UDC librarians. So that will be beyond the sort of traditional archives groupings that are certainly very well established. So some of the common themes that have emerged from these three reports: space pressures, uncertainty about what within our general collections is special, either individually or collectively. Some real uncertainty around what can safely be discarded, and, as you'll have gathered, metrics and benchmarking. A few challenges for us as directors. We often have, special collections. I nearly titled this "Bits to Bytes and Bothersome Backlogs." But the consequences of hundreds, not even tens of years, but hundreds of years of benign neglect, and the fact that they haven't, on the whole, disappeared into dust, versus what we were talking about this morning, which is all around research data and how to begin to try and harness that for possible use and reuse. Some challenges around as yet unknown collection strengths and collection weaknesses, or collection, mass duplication, and that all ties into the what can we safely discard, which will, to a certain extent, help us challenge that, or relieve the other challenge, which is that of space. I think there's a big challenge between our role maybe as preservers and custodians of this material versus that of our roles within institutional or within education institutions. We've got the national libraries who are very much sort of active, particularly in the preservation role. So if there is a nicely preserved copy of the London Illustrated News in at least 3 national collections, then maybe locally we might be very happy to let our students get their sticky fingers all over the copies that we hold locally. And that sometimes one faces challenges in having that discussion. And also, I think there's something else that we might be wanting to think about, which is do we fully understand what we value in our archival collections? In other words, when we have an archival collection, are we thinking about what we use it for, what information we get from it, I mean, again, to go back what Emma was talking, you've got a real, by looking at the physical manuscript, you get an idea about how a book was made. When you look at a composer's archive, you get an idea about what the creative process was. Are we looking at that and then translating that across to the sorts of archives that we might receive born digitally? And will we still get that? Will we still be able to understand the creative process? Will we be able to understand how the thing was made? So I'm just wondering if there's a bit of work to be done there on looking at some of our historic collections and translating that into how we might begin to understand what we're getting in born digitally, and how we might in particular work with creators to help understand that. Now, I know some work's going on, particularly in the literary field, but I don't think it's widespread yet.